The coastlines here have it all.
Perhaps more shipwrecks per mile of coastline than any other North American place.
World-famous fossil beds, holding clues to the earliest evolution of human civilization.
The Bay of Fundy has the highest tides in the world and really carve out the landscape here.
Historic shorelines that would be a gateway for thousands of immigrants to the New World.
When it came over in 1773, if you can imagine, 189 people on this, sleeping on this, living on this. Some of them died on it as well.
And the majestic highlands of the Americas.
I do believe that Gaelic language is my birthright and that of everybody that comes from this tradition.
Now we explore this rugged coastline like never before. A bird's eye view, unlocking the secrets of our maritime past, present, and future. This is Canada, Over the Edge. Halifax, Nova Scotia, an outpost on North America's east coast. Throughout history, a haven for sailors, pirates, and soldiers. A garrison town that over 2 centuries grew into a city. Facing the fury of the Atlantic head-on, this port city was England's first stop in exploring the New World. Centuries earlier, the region was populated by the native Mi'kmaq, who called the area Shabukto, using it as their summer hunting and fishing grounds, then retreating inland for the harsh Atlantic winters. From the 18th century onward, European settlements expanded and the city prospered. Today, hints of Halifax's colonial past are everywhere. From the Victorian architecture scattered along the historic waterfront, to military installations that still stand centuries later as a testament to the violent beginnings of life in the New World. Like Nova Scotia itself, Halifax is built around a peninsula. Home to more than 400,000 people. It is the major metropolitan center of Canada's East Coast. And its lifeblood is the harbor. For 3 centuries, cargo ships, fishing boats, and vessels of war have all sought shelter here. It is the largest ice-free harbor in the world. This world-famous body of water continues to be Halifax's connection to the world, even hundreds of years later. But the true tragic legacy of this seafaring tradition won't be found on the water. Rather, in the scattered remains of the ships that didn't make it home.
We've had a lot of shipwrecks, and perhaps more shipwrecks per mile of coastline than any other North American place. People are estimating 10,000 shipwrecks around our coast.
Nova Scotia is the world's shipwreck capital, a distinction that has motivated investigator John Wesley Chisholm to explore coastal wrecks for more than 15 years and share that legacy with the world.
With changing technology, the shipwrecks that are along the coast here are starting to reveal themselves in greater numbers. And in Nova Scotia recently, we've set up a new version of a Special Places Act, which is about underwater marine cultural heritage and protecting shipwrecks. Up until this point, we've allowed treasure hunters to come and look for shipwrecks and take things, so we really don't have much of an assessment up until now about our shipwreck heritage. But moving forward, I think we're going to be able to collect and share our stories a lot more with the rest of Nova Scotia and with the world.
From Halifax south, it is a rocky perimeter, more than 20 kilometers of barren shoreline, foreboding granite bedrock, more than 400 million years old. It is a prehistoric trail leading to one of the East Coast's true treasures, and one of Canada's most recognizable coastal images. The lighthouse and the rocks of Peggy's Cove. It is a village whose iconic stature has grown over time. Its name is a mystery. Some believe Peggy was orphaned by the rocks here, the lone survivor of a deadly shipwreck. Now, centuries later, the cove that bears her name continues to thrive. Each year, 750,000 tourists flock to this small protected village of 50. 15,000 visitors for each resident. They come here at the entrance to St. Margaret's Bay to marvel at the crashing waves and smooth granite shaped by the sea. Beauty that inspired the first German immigrants to settle here in the 19th century. Beauty that has inspired the world ever since. As we head cross-country to Nova Scotia's western shore, we explore the power of the sea and a showcase of geological beauty, carved from the tides and currents over millions of years. From the city of Halifax to iconic Peggy's Cove. Our aerial survey of Nova Scotia now heads 10 kilometers inland. A journey northwest across the heart of the province. Inland, more than 3,000 lakes with nearly 4,000 islands dot the landscape. inaccessible by land, breathtaking from the air. These freshwater coastlines barely resemble those on the province's perimeter. Fierce fury, replaced by calm, tranquil waters. This 100-kilometer journey sea to sea is marked by magnificent forests and wilderness. As we soar above the rich, unspoiled interior. Finally, over the mountains that mark Land's End, we reach Nova Scotia's western coastline. The Bay of Fundy, an inlet separating peninsular Nova Scotia from the North American continent. Measuring more than 500 kilometers of scenic shoreline. In the distance, the bay's iconic Cape d'Or lighthouse stands on guard. A station has stood here since 1875, when a fog whistle warned approaching vessels of the infamous tidal rip. Waters moving so fast, they could pull a ship off course and into the deadly rocks. A light was added in 1922, and nearly a century later, navigators still look for its beacon on this world-famous inland waterway. Crossing the bay by air, hours turn into minutes as we approach one of Fundy's most famous landmarks. These rock pillars, etched over millions of years, mark the end of the trajectory of a spit of land called Cape Split. A renegade slither of land that escaped the nearby North Mountain chain and veered into the sea. Its cliffs soar 200 feet above the water. And the 7-kilometer trail from the mainland into the bay has become a pilgrimage for Nova Scotians. Far below the rocks and soaring cliffs, the true mystery of the Bay of Fundy is found on the ground. All along this coastline, massive mudflats and sections of ocean floor are revealed twice a day. The Bay of Fundy's tides are the highest in the world, rising and falling by as much as 17 meters with each cycle. A force that brings life to the region and sustains it. A constant rush of waters and pounding waves that has physically shaped the coastlines here. Along open water, we see the timeless signatures of that force. ethereal geological monuments emerging from the sea. Ten kilometers across the bay, this is Nova Scotia's secluded northern shore. Here, flat, open stretches of coastline are intersected by massive rock structures. They are geological anomalies anywhere else. In the Bay of Fundy, they are seemingly everywhere. Some say this is Nova Scotia's forgotten coastline. Far from towns and cities, the isolated North Shore holds some of eastern Canada's most majestic landscape. This is 5 islands, towering cliff faces, soaring more than 300 feet high, dropping suddenly to sandy beaches below. According to native Mi'kmaq tradition, these islands were a divine creation. Legend recounts how the mighty god Glooscap was confronted by a beaver flooding his magnificent gardens. Glooscap smothered the beaver in stones, sticks, and mud. The beaver turned to gold, leaving us a gift in the islands we see today. According to modern scientific research, 5 islands are the legacy of an incredible geological past. An ancient ice age with massive moving glaciers and sea levels 15 meters higher than today. Now, we explore what's left behind. Crumbling cliffs containing the secrets of our past. On Nova Scotia's northern coastline. All along the shores of Nova Scotia's Bay of Fundy, a stunning legacy stands proud. With sea level rise and massive glaciers leaving geological marvels in their wake. But it is the world's highest tides that draw geologists here from around the world. With each tidal cycle, investigators learn a tiny bit more as the coastline is eaten away, revealing the secrets of our past.
The tides have a significant effect on this site. The Bay of Fundy has the highest tides in the world and really carve out the landscape here.
Melissa Gray is a paleontologist at the Joggins Fossil Cliffs on the Bay of Fundy.
What happens is the water goes out to such a great distance and you see these huge mud flats, and then it comes up all the way right to the base of the cliff. So it's a huge distance that the waves travel. And they're powerful. The rocks down here are huge, and the tides move them around all the time and wear down the rocks as well and allow us to see new fossils.
In 2008, Joggins was named a UNESCO World Heritage Site, a stretch of coastline with incredible scientific value, as nearly 150 species of fossils lie hidden in these rocks.
The Carboniferous, these rocks were preserved from over 300 million years ago, and this is the site where the world's oldest known reptile was found. And it's a really important discovery because it's where vertebrates, animals with backbones like you and I, were able to leave the water for all of their lives. So amphibians, like frogs, need to go back to the water to reproduce, but reptiles don't need to. And we, as humans, are actually part of that chain. So it represents this whole new branch of the evolutionary tree of which we're part of. I like to think that geologists read rocks like they read pages of a book. And the layers in these cliffs are like pages of a book, and rocks that fall out of those layers tell us interesting things about the environment.
For Gray, the mysteries to be solved at Joggins are found at the microscopic level, looking at changes in time that have affected our world.
There's still much that we have to learn about evolution. Evolution is a theory after all, and so there's still many questions we have about the patterns and processes of evolution. And this is a great site to study that. Understanding evolution will help us hopefully understand our effect on the world.
From the Bay of Fundy, we begin a 150-kilometer journey towards Cape Breton Island. Heading east over the Bay of Fundy, water and land gradually meet, with wild rivers and streams twisting and turning below. From above, it is a sight to behold. A rich palette of colors blending together to create a vibrant ecosystem below, teeming with life, fertile land for the more than 1,000 farms that supply Nova Scotians with much of their food. At low tide, from above, the mud flats and tidal regions of the Bay of Fundy seem limitless. The constantly moving waters are key to life here, part of the culture as well as nature, providing sustenance, transportation, and even energy to homes in the region. Inland, the whirling blades of wind turbines dot the horizon. Each structure stands more than 20 stories tall, providing power to more than 600 homes. Within minutes, Nova Scotia's northern maritime boundary comes into full view. The Northumberland Strait, a sheltered branch of the Atlantic, separating Nova Scotia from Prince Edward Island. A haven for summer tourists, The Northumberland Strait is considered to have the warmest waters in eastern Canada. All along the bay, small breakwaters and beaches provide shelter for the communities that make their homes here. It is a remote stretch of province with a rich history. Settled by Acadians and Black Loyalists centuries ago, the rich fishing grounds here continue to sustain a traditional way of life. Just offshore, a teardrop-shaped spot of land is a wilderness preserve. Pomcat Island, with its iconic lighthouse, dating back more than a century. It was settled by 5 Acadian families in 1761. Now, it lies on one of the busiest shipping lanes in the region. Just across the bay, we reach the end of mainland Nova Scotia. On the horizon, one of the world's famous islands beckons us, and we set course for Cape Breton. And a rare aerial survey of this cultural and geographic wonder on the edge of Canada. As we venture further from mainland Nova Scotia to Cape Breton Island, we begin our approach to the Canso Causeway. For more than 50 years, the causeway has connected the island to the world. Each year, hundreds of thousands of vehicles cross here. A man-made link built out of 10 million tons of rock, 1.3 kilometers long. But in many ways, the island is a world unto its own. Surrounded by ocean, Cape Breton is built around one of the world's largest saltwater lakes. More than 1,000 square kilometers of brackish waters, sheltered inland from the fierce Atlantic. A body of water the French named Bras d'Or. It is one of the most culturally rich regions of the province. The translation of Nova Scotia to New Scotland can best be understood here, in the heartland of the region's Gaelic roots. It is a legacy that dates back to the late 18th century, when a wave of immigration from the Scottish Highlands brought Nova Scotia's first immigrant ship to the New World.
We're standing on a replica of the Hector. When it came over in 1773, it came over with 189 settlers. That was the first ship directly to start the massive emigration flow from Scotland to Canada. But that opened a floodgate, a whole wave of emigration from England, from Scotland, from Ireland, and they not only settled in Nova Scotia, but then from Nova Scotia moved on, settled the rest of Canada, and settled throughout North America. For all intents and purposes, the Hector is Canada's Mayflower. And if you can imagine the size of this boat, I mean, this is an original replica. It's 110 feet long, it's about 22 feet wide, 189 people on this, sleeping on this for 11 weeks, living on this. So actually, some of them died on it as well. Most of the people that came on the Hector spoke Gaelic. A lot of the settlers, when they landed in Pictou, then moved on to other parts of Nova Scotia, and quite a few of them moved up to Cape Breton, where the Gaelic language, the whole Gaelic culture is probably as strong, if not stronger there, than it is in some parts of Scotland.
Today, the descendants of those original Gaelic settlers still thrive. Their traditions, like the milling frolic, a social gathering where neighbors help each other prepare wool to be sewn, live on.
Here we have a milling frolic, gatherings, people get together to sing songs. Historically, people would soak the blanket in a mordant solution that would fix the fibers in the wool and fix the dyes so they wouldn't change so much afterwards. Kind of a pre-shrinking process. People are hitting the blanket on the table to the beat of the song. And there's 4 beats in a line, and they beat the blanket in time to the music. This is one of the Gaelic performances that has remained intact and is very much goes back to a time when people got together in communities to help each other perform different work processes. And in Gaelic people would spend their whole day in the presence of song or involved in song, because song was a part of work. And whether you're working by yourself or working in groups, there was always songs to go with that particular work process with a rhythm that matched the rhythm of that work. Cape Breton Island alone saw some 25,000 immigrants from Gaelic Scotland. They followed a pattern of migration they call chain migration, where people from one island sought out other people from that island when they came to Cape Breton, to the New World. So they brought with them and they transplanted their localized traditions, their dialects, their song tradition, their dance repertoire, their song repertoire. They transplanted all of that whole and intact to that little community in Nova Scotia, and it continued here.
From the interior coastline of the Verdure Lakes back to the Atlantic, we venture along one of the largest water systems in Nova Scotia. The famous Margaree River extends from the Cape Breton Highlands to the Gulf of St. Lawrence. Draining an area of more than 1,300 square kilometers. Fishing enthusiasts gather here from all over the world, drawn to the rich fishing grounds created by the salmon that return each year to spawn upstream. Mi'kmaq natives hunted and fished here for centuries, it was the French who first named the river St. Marguerite in the 18th century. Scottish settlers would arrive a century later, and the region would become Marguerite. In the lowlands, the shelter of the valleys provides some of Cape Breton's richest agricultural lands. And deciduous forests that produce the world-famous fall colors. Miles from the nearest road, on the northeast branch of the river, short rapids and deep pools run alongside small islands. Further on, the hillsides slowly rise. Twisting and turning north, the river follows a course that reveals the geographic history of this region. Its path, the Aspy Fault Line, a spot where two continental plates likely collided more than 400 million years ago, pushing the seafloor upwards and creating the Appalachian Mountains we see today. Today, it is not just the social traditions that survive. Some see Gaelic as the future. The old language, now used by just a few hundred native speakers, is seeing a resurgence with younger generations.
Saint Margaret My name's Joanne McIntyre, and I teach Gaelic at Dalbury Academy. Smisha Ausak Nichinthud is Hami Czechosgaelic ag Skal Dalbury. The reason I feel that Gaelic is important to be taught to kids is it's a part of who they are. It's a part of who we are. But I do believe that this language is my birthright and that of everybody that comes from this tradition. It's something that was taken from us. It's a window into the past. It's a way to access, there's literature and there's a vast song corpus in this culture, and those songs were the people's way of telling their people's history as opposed to what the scholars wrote or the observers wrote. There are still people living today that were born into this culture and language, and this is their first language, and that to me means that it's still alive and going. And now there is a resurgence of interest. So it's all that, and it's growing up in an environment where I heard Gaelic all the time. My father spoke it. I didn't understand what he was saying, but you're always a little bit curious. It sounds different. It sounds musical. It sounds like growing up. It sounds like home. Saint Margaret
As we continue through the Gaelic heartland of the region, the steep-sided valleys continue to grow. We are now in the final leg of our journey. As we approach the world-famous Cape Breton Highlands, finally, the sea. From the interior of Cape Breton to the island's eastern coastline along the Atlantic Ocean. Here, we head south, following the contours of the famed Highlands National Park. This is one of the most scenic and remote coastlines in North America. But here, on spectacular Middlehead Peninsula, we find one of Nova Scotia's hidden gems, jutting into the sea. A seaside resort, Celtic Lodge, drawing visitors here from around the world to the scenic wilderness of Cape Breton's eastern coastline. Beyond the stately main lodge, hiking trails continue along this narrow and jagged 2-kilometer spit of land. With the ocean clearly visible on both sides. The landscape is an enigma, defying the thrusting waves and relentless currents for thousands of years, and leaving natural wonders everywhere.
Saint Margaret Bochiana, Swan Gangelia Hirawe.
From Whale Rock, off the far side of the peninsula, we continue south. Along a coastline that continues to reveal the story of this region. This is not only one of North America's most scenic coastlines, it is loaded with history as well. Some historians believe it was on Cape Breton Island that John Cabot first landed in 1497 on a historic mission from England's King Henry VII to explore the New World. Others believe it was a Portuguese fishing colony established in 1521 that would be the first European settlement in the region. These early explorers would set the stage for the centuries to come, tumultuous times on an island that would be fought for and switch hands between the French and English for nearly 200 years. In the end, the English would emerge victorious, and the island's diverse Scottish, Irish, Mi'kmaq, and French populations were eventually forced to join Nova Scotia against their will in 1820. Now, nearly 2 centuries later, much of the eastern coast along the Cape Breton Highlands remains untouched. From high above, the world-famous Cabot Trail stretches 298 kilometers. Clinging to the cliff faces of the highlands. The road, widely considered one of the world's most scenic drives, connects 8 communities in northern Cape Breton. Communities that until 1932 were only accessible by the sea. Heading east across open water, the cliff faces recede and we return closer to civilization. Along the way, we explore one of Nova Scotia's many unique geographical features as we take a bird's-eye view of Bird Island. Barely visible from shore, tourists travel here by boat to get a glimpse of the seals, eagles, and bird species that make this their home. Further east, the former mining towns around Point Coney still survive. These outposts once relied on the surrounding coal fields for survival. Now, it is the unique beauty of this region that is their story to the world. From bustling cities to mudflats, highlands, and crashing waves, the story of Nova Scotia appropriately ends here at the Point Coney Lighthouse. A light has shone here since 1874, more than 10 miles out to sea, warning approaching ships of the rocky shoals along the formidable coastline that is Nova Scotia.